North, the shadows of Verdun. The trenches smelled of rotting flesh and damp earth. Private Daniel Carter clutched his rifle, his fingers numb from the cold. Around him, the men of the 34th Infantry Regiment huddled in silence, their hollow eyes staring into the flickering shadows. The Germans were close, so close Daniel could sometimes hear, their whispers carried by the wind. Sergeant O'Reilly spat into the mud. "They're coming tonight. I can feel it." No one argued. The air was thick with dread. Then the first shell hit. The explosion tore through the trench, sending dirt and body parts flying. Daniel was thrown against the wall, his ears ringing. Screams filled the air as men scrambled for cover. A second shell landed, closer this time. Gas! 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 Someone shrieked. Daniel fumbled for his mask, his heart pounding. Through the haze of smoke he saw shapes moving. Dark, inhuman figures slithering through the fog. "What the hell are those?" a soldier cried. Then the screaming started. The things in the gas weren't German. They were too tall, too thin, their limbs bending in ways that made Daniel's stomach twist. Their eyes glowed a sickly yellow in the darkness. One of them grabbed Private Harris, its fingers elongating like vines, wrapping around his throat. Harris's scream was cut short as his head was ripped clean off. Daniel fired. The bullet passed right through the creature. Sergeant O'Reilly roared, "Fall back! Fall back now!" They ran through the maze of trenches, the creatures close behind. The gas made it hard to see, but Daniel could hear them, whispering, laughing in a language that made his blood freeze. A hand shot out from the mud, grabbing Daniel's ankle. He screamed as a half-rotted soldier emerged, his eyes milky white. "They're coming!" The corpse hissed before collapsing into the earth. Daniel didn't stop running. They reached the secondary trench line, but it was overrun. Bodies hung from the barbed wire, their insides strewn across the ground. Captain Vries stood in the center, his mouth sewn shut with rusted wire. His eyes were wide with terror. Then Daniel saw it. A towering figure in a tattered officer's coat, its face a mass of writhing tendrils. It pointed a skeletal finger at the survivors. The ground beneath them began to move. Hands, dozens of them, burst from the earth, dragging the men down. Daniel slashed with his bayonet, severing rotting fingers, but there were too many. Private Jenkins was pulled under, his final scream muffled by the mud. Sergeant O'Reilly emptied his revolver into the towering figure. It didn't flinch. Instead, it smiled. "You are all already dead," it whispered. Daniel broke free and ran. He didn't look back. The forest ahead was his only hope. Branches lashed at his face as he stumbled through the trees. Behind him, the whispers grew louder. Then, a voice. "Daniel!" His blood ran cold. It sounded like his brother, the brother who had died in the circle. "Daniel, join us!" He turned. His brother stood there, his uniform caked in blood, his jaw hanging by a thread of flesh. "It doesn't hurt," his brother said, reaching out. "Not anymore." Daniel raised his rifle. "I'm sorry," he sobbed, pulling the trigger. The thing wearing his brother's face laughed as the bullet struck. Daniel ran until his lungs burned. Dawn was breaking. The forest was still dark. Then he saw the road. Salvation. The German patrol stood there, their rifles raised. "A halt," one shouted. Daniel didn't stop. He couldn't. The gunfire echoed through the trees. Daniel lay in the dirt, his vision fading. The whispers returned, closer now. Shadows hung over him. "You are already dead," they murmured. As the darkness took him, Daniel realized they were right. The bleeding trenches. A World War I horror story. November 1917. The Western Front, France. The artillery barrage had stopped 3 hours ago. Private Thomas Ellison wiped freezing rain from his face as he peered over the sandbags. No man's land stretched before him. A wasteland of shell craters, barbed wire, and the blackened remains of trees. The silence was worse than the shelling. "Where's Corporal Jenkins?" Private Wilkes whispered, his breath fogging in the cold air. Sergeant Macready adjusted his gas mask. "Went to check the listening post. Should have been back by now." A distant drip, drip, drip echoed through the trench. Too thick to be rainwater. Then a whistle. Not British, not German, something wrong. They found Jenkins at the forward sap. His body lay perfectly intact, uniform neatly pressed. But when Macready rolled him over, Ellison gagged. Jenkins' chest was hollowed out, organs gone, ribs picked clean. No blood, no wounds, just empty, and carved into his back were symbols. The same jagged marks scratched into the trench walls, glowing faintly with phosphorescent fungus. "Shrapnel?" Wilkes asked, voice shaking. Macready's hand hovered over his revolver. "Nothing made by man did this." From the darkness beyond the wire, clicking like bone on rusted metal, the sentry's scream tore through the night. Ellison reached the fire step just in time to see Private Donahue dragged into no man's land by a thing wrapped in barbed wire and rotting uniform. It moved on all fours, limbs bending the wrong way, rifles cracked. The creature didn't flinch. It turned its head 180 degrees, and Ellison saw Donahue's face stretched over something inhuman. Its mouth split vertically, revealing teeth like rusted nails. Then the yellow fog rolled in, not gas, something alive. "Fall back," Macready ordered, but the communication trench had collapsed. Ellison slipped, tumbling into a sinkhole, landing in an ancient tunnel. His torch flickered over walls covered in bones. French, German, some in armor centuries old, all hollowed out like Jenkins. Something wet dripped on his shoulder. The ceiling moved. Needle-thin fingers pressed into Ellison's mouth as visions flooded his mind. Battlefields stretching back to the Crusades. Soldiers from every war, chests split open. Something ancient beneath the mud, feeding on fear. The trenches weren't dug to fight men. They were dug to contain. He woke to Macready dragging him through tunnels. "They're coming!" Behind them the walls breathed. 6 men barricaded in the ammunition dugout. Wilkes sobbed as something heavy slammed against the door. "What are they?" Macready cocked his Webley. "Older than God. The Tommies at Ypres called them trench ghouls." Wood splintered. Ellison grabbed 2 grenades. "If we're going out, make it count," Macready finished. The explosion shook the earth. Ellison woke alone in an empty trench. Sunlight filtered through smoke. Then he saw them. His entire platoon stood at their posts, rifles shouldered, chests hollow. Jenkins turned, grinning with a mouth too wide. "You're one of us now." When the relief force found Ellison, the medic called it shell shock. That night, sentries swore they heard whistling in no man's land. And from the abandoned trenches, something answered. Title: The Frozen Shadows of Bastogne. A World War II supernatural thriller. December 22nd, 1944. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The howling wind drowned out all sound as Sergeant Jack Calloway led his battered reconnaissance platoon through the snow-laden pines. They'd been separated from the 101st Airborne during the German counter-offensive. And now, as twilight deepened, the temperature plummeted to levels that could kill a man as surely as bullets. "Check the map again," Calloway ordered, his breath frosting in the frigid air. Corporal Vinnie Russo shivered as he unfolded the damp paper. According to this, there should be a village just beyond this ridge. Foy or Noville or... His voice trailed off as the distant sound of church bells echoed through the forest. No one spoke. All the churches in the area had been bombed to rubble weeks ago. The village appeared like a ghostly mirage in the snowstorm. No lights, no smoke from chimneys. Just 12 intact houses surrounding a pristine church, its steeple untouched by war. Private Ellis, their point man, suddenly raised his fist in warning. "Sergeant, the snow." Calloway looked down. The fresh powder around the buildings showed no tracks. None entering, none leaving. Yet the church bells continued their mournful toll. As they entered the village square, the temperature dropped another 20 degrees. Russo's teeth chattered violently. "This ain't right, Sarge. This ain't natural." Then the first scream came from inside the church. It sounded exactly like Private Jenkins, the man they'd buried just that morning. The heavy oak doors swung open without a sound. Inside, the pews were filled with soldiers, American, British, German, all sitting perfectly still, their frost-covered faces locked in eternal screams. Their eyes, glazed with ice, seemed to follow Calloway's men as they entered. At the altar stood a figure in a tattered Wehrmacht greatcoat, its back turned. When it slowly rotated to face them, Ellis vomited in the eye. The thing had Jenkins' face, but its eyes were solid black orbs, and its smile stretched far beyond human limits. "Welcome," it said in perfect English, its voice like cracking ice. "We've been waiting for reinforcements." Chaos erupted as the frozen corpses stood in unison. Calloway's men fired wildly, but their bullets passed harmlessly through the icy figures. Russo grabbed a fallen candelabra and hurled it at the stained glass window, shattering the image of a demonic saint. As moonlight streamed in, the horror was revealed. The church floor was actually transparent ice, and beneath it, hundreds more soldiers floated in suspended animation, their faces pressed against the frozen surface, mouths open in silent screams. The Jenkins thing laughed. "This war is just another harvest for us. Your fear, your souls, they never freeze." Calloway and Ellis made for the bell tower as Russo covered their retreat with the last of their ammo. The wooden stairs groaned underfoot, the temperature dropping with each step. At the top, they found the source of the ringing. No bell, but Private Jenkins' own attacks, swinging violently from an invisible force. Below them, the remaining men were being dragged toward the altar, their screams cut short as frost spread across their faces. Ellis grabbed the tags. "Whatever these things are, they're tied to the dead. We need to." The floorboards exploded upward as skeletal hands burst through, grabbing Ellis's legs. Calloway barely managed to pull Ellis free, both men tumbling down the stairs into the nave. Russo, now the last man standing, had fashioned a Molotov from sacramental wine. "We'll burn in hell!" he screamed, hurling it at the altar. The flames spread unnaturally fast, blue and cold, freezing everything they touched. The Jenkins thing shrieked as the fire encased it in an icy tomb. "Run!" Calloway ordered as the entire church began to collapse inward. They barely made it outside before the structure imploded with a sound like 1,000 breaking icicles. Dawn found the 3 survivors miles from the village, their frostbitten faces turned toward Allied lines. No one spoke of what happened. No one would believe them anyway. But months later, when the war ended and Calloway stood in Times Square celebrating VE Day, he felt an unnatural chill despite the spring warmth. Turning, he glimpsed a familiar face in the crowd. Jenkins, smiling that impossible smile, before